morning. So this morning we're very fortunate to hear from Myron Williams. Myron blesses us every week through the gospel choir and as a liturgist and as our bass guitar player. And he enriches many other people's lives throughout the week through his experience as a mental health nurse. And this morning he'll share with us some thoughts about how we can face anxieties and worries.
Good morning. Transformation is in reach, but we have to learn to manage our stress. I got stress, you got stress, all God's children got stress. The problem is that your body doesn't know the difference between stress of being attacked or stress we're worrying about our bills or our loved ones. So during prehistoric times, if a caveman was attacked by, let's say, a saber-toothed tiger, his heart would pump more blood into his arms so that he could lift the club and hit the saber-toothed tiger. That's where we get the term going upside your head, which is a prehistoric term. But if it didn't faze the tiger, the heart would also pump more blood into his legs so he can run from said tiger, which is where we get the term, feet don't fail me now. This is what's called a fight or flight syndrome. Your body pumps more blood into your arms and legs when we're under stress, your big muscles. Less blood goes to places like your digestive tract. So when people are under a lot of stress, they tend to get indigestion. They don't digest their food as well. Your stomach is about the size of your fist, maybe a little bit smaller. Food goes into your stomach and your body thinks, oh my gosh, we're under attack. So it secretes more acid into the stomach so that it can use the food for energy. But we're not really being attacked, we're just worrying about things. So the acid is corrosive and people tend to get things like what's called gastritis. And remember, it's only about the size of your fist, so after a while the acid goes back up our esophagus and we get what's called acid reflux or indigestion. That's why we need an antacid to reduce the acid level in our stomachs. So antacids in this country alone is a multi-billion-dollar industry. That's how much stress there is in our country. If I were to squeeze my arm real tight, it would start to hurt because whenever you cut off blood flow to a certain part of your body, it causes pain. So remember, when we're under stress, more blood goes to our arms and our legs. Less blood goes to places like our head and our brain. So when people are under stress, they tend to get headaches and migraines. It's because they're often a stress response. Our body thinks that we're under attack, even though we're not really under attack. So our pancreas will secrete less insulin into our bloodstream so that the body has more sugar in our blood so we can use it for energy to fight or run, but we're not really being attacked. So when people are under a lot of stress for a long time, they get what's called type 2 diabetes. Some people get it so bad that they have to take insulin to reduce the blood sugar in their bodies. Every system in our body is negatively affected by too much stress. So what I want to do is share with you 10 stress tips to reduce our overall stress levels. So one would be learn to plan. Disorganization can breed stress. Having too many projects going on simultaneously can be overwhelming and confusing. And planning can be just as simple as having a place to put your keys when you come in the door, so that when you go ready to leave out the door, you're not saying, where's my keys? It's right here. Oh. So, another tip, recognize and accept limits. A lot of us set unreasonable and perfectionistic goals for ourselves. It's good to have goals, but make them reasonable so that you can reach them. If you start working in a company, if you expect to be CEO of that company in about a month or two, it might be unreasonable. So make sure your goals are in reach. Learn to play. Sometimes we need an escape from the pressures of life just to have fun. We have a 24-hour news cycle. The news is, if it bleeds, it leads. Sometimes you need to turn it off and put on something funny. Also, laughter is good medicine. It releases endorphins and it's very protective. Focus on the positive. Try to avoid criticizing other people. Learn to praise the things that you like in others. Be a positive person. If you say, it should make you feel good to say something nice to somebody. When you put a smile on somebody else's face, that should also put a smile on your face as well. Okay? Be a good person. Along those lines, avoid negative people. And we all know who they are, right? Just try to avoid as much as you can. Negative people will find a problem for every solution. Remember that. Learn to tolerate and forgive. Intolerance of others leads to a frustration and anger. When people make you angry, they control you. If you do not forgive them, they will keep control. So what I do is, because it's normal, we get angry at others sometimes, and I do too. But I try to regroup, and then I pray for them. Because I give it to God. Instead of holding on to the anger and carrying it around with me, I pray for them. Because we don't know what was going on in that person's life that made them the way they are, that made you angry in the first place. So as Christians, we should pray for them. Avoid unnecessary competition. There are plenty of competitive situations that we can avoid, but worrying about winning in every situation or being the first or being the best, it's sometimes is undue situations. What does she have on? What's he got? Or I got to get in that parking space before this person. Why? There's one right over here. Avoid unnecessary competition. Get regular physical exercise. Of course, sometimes you need to check with your physician, but if you can do something that raises your heart rate up for about 20 minutes, and it can be just as simple as walking, you'll see a great reduction in your overall stress level. Okay? Meditation. When I say meditate, you don't have to sit in a lotus position with a candle and go home. I mean, you can. But the easiest, simplest form of meditation is actually just deep breathing. See, when we're under stress, your body thinks, oh my gosh, we're under attack, so I need more oxygen in my blood system. So you tend to breathe more shallow. That's why in the horror movies, when the girl's running through the woods and Dracula, she's going, So when we're under stress, sometimes it helps just to take some deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose, and slowly out through your mouth. Something that simple actually reduces your overall stress level. Talk out your troubles. Find a friend, member of clergy, faculty member, counselor, somebody that you can open up and talk with. I mean, let's face it, most of the people that we associate in our lives. We say, how you doing? Fine. How you doing? Fine. I'm okay. Fine. Not everything is fine. Find somebody that you can open up and be real with. They got problems too. And be open for them. Let it be a good ear for them as well. And the last but not least, there's more than 10, by the way. I'm just giving you 10. And the tip is prayer. Sometimes we need to let go and let God, because He won't give you more than you can handle. Those times in our lives when we feel all alone, that's when there's only one set of footprints. Stress can be like a dark cloud or storms in our lives. So don't tell God how big the storm is. Tell the storm how big your God is. Amen? Amen.
Again, this is a sign of our interdependence. Here we have Jeff leading this team. Today we have Myron, who is part of that team. It's always a blessing when we learn from our colleagues so that we may get to grow. So I have my keys. I'm keeping them right here so I won't miss them, so it won't stress me. So I listen to Myron. So Myron, I've listened to you already. Transformation is within reach. This morning, Jeff and Myron helped us to realize that there are ways that we can experience transformation. And we were challenged this morning to recognize the things that stress us and to make sure we get off that stress out of our way, such that it doesn't become a hindrance to the transformation that God has prepared for us. Meaning that as we search for ways that we could experience transformation, we realize that at times it's overwhelming when we try to implement change. Meaning that as we contemplate over change and transformation, we may end up being stressed, like Myron shared with us. But now he has given us the tools to reduce that stress. So now the challenge is for us to believe change is possible. Change is possible because God empowers us. Myron reminded us to let God in, to let God take over. And in the book of Matthew, Jesus said this to remind his listeners. When you allow God to be part of your life, God gives you a new perspective. Like Myron pointed out, that now the next step is for us to realize that we can go to God, to pull and let His power fill us to an extent that we do not spend time telling God that the problem is too big, but to tell the problem that my God is too big. The one who is saying, through Christ, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible, not relying on our own strength, but relying on the strength that proceeds from God. In life, when change seems impossible, we have to learn to trust. To trust more than our willpower. For oftentimes we have relied on our willpower. While willpower is a positive thing, but we need to go beyond our willpower and let God fill in and sustain our willpower and expand our willpower and extend our willpower to an extent that when a challenge is too big in your eyes, you let God fill you and empower you. We learn to plan for success, knowing that in everything, God will help us move beyond what is in our capacity as human beings. We learn not to give up. For Paul reminds us in the book of Galatians chapter 6 verse 9, not to give up, not to quit at doing the right things. So as we plan for success, we multiply the positive experiences and we count and celebrate the positive things. Oftentimes we spend more time entertaining our negative experiences and we magnify them and they become bigger and bigger and we end up identifying ourselves with our negative experiences. Some individuals have yielded to the negative experience to an extent that they present themselves. Oh, they know me. I'm an angry person. They know me. They know me in my family. I just zip up. But yet, there's no individual who spends 24 hours angry. There are times when you are not angry. Let's seize that moment when we are not angry and celebrate, this is who I am. When my daughter was born, I smiled and laughed. When my son was born, when my friend got a new job, I smiled and I laughed and I hugged him or her. So you're a good person. Multiply that and celebrate that. That's why the Apostle Paul is saying, don't give up doing the right thing. Paul realized that no matter who you are, no matter how many negative things that you have done or I've done, I have moments that I've done the right things. You have moments when you have done the right things. So keep on multiplying the positive things and identify yourself as the one who managed to do that right thing and increase and multiply the right things that you managed to do. Hence, we are reminded by the authors of this book that stop worrying more than you pray. Instead, rely on God. They suggest that it is an act of relaxing in God's grace. So at times, there is this idea that, you're not being realistic. Are you not seeing that you have this challenge? But yet we are reminded, when we stop worrying, because we are trusting in God, what we are doing is we are relaxing in God's grace. So let's entertain this habit that I have to decide to relax in God's grace. Now is time for me to relax in God's grace. I've dealt with my challenges. I've done what I can do with my power. I've invested my energy. Now is time to relax in God's grace. Prayer is a time to relax in God's grace. There are times when we have considered prayer as a chore. Why? Because we have considered it as a legal thing that we have to do, as an obligation. But the moment we allow prayer to be a moment to relax in God's presence, it ceases to be a chore, but a time that we are loved, a time that we are encouraged, a time that we remember that there is a God who cherishes us and a God who loves us deeply. To an extent that if we have allowed ourselves to relax in God's grace, then we are empowered to identify areas of growth. Why? Because we are covered In the same way that today Melinda covered Jonathan in the shower, imagine God covering you with His grace. And now you attend and reflect on areas of growth. Not from an overwhelming viewpoint, but from a relaxing point of view, because you are now covered with God's grace. It's not a God who is here to beat you up. It's not a Jesus who is here to beat you up. That's why that day when the woman was brought before Jesus Christ because she had sinned, Jesus let her relax. That's why Jesus turned down his face. While this woman was overwhelmed, anxiety level was skyrocketing because all she was thinking of, now this is the end of my life. But because she was in Jesus' presence, in God's grace, even those who had prepared to stone her, when they were asked, who among you who has not sinned, cast the first stone? It is Jesus who will respond to our overwhelming challenges. When we go in Jesus' presence, when we relax in Jesus' presence, when we go to Jesus and say, this is beyond my energy, this is beyond my ability, this is beyond me, I can no longer handle this. I have tried what I can. I always tell people, we don't need to go to Jesus to say, Jesus, help me lift this book. We can do that. But there are challenges that come in our families, in our own individual lives, that are bigger than our strength. Those are meant for Jesus. So don't mistake lifting up a book and the challenge that is overwhelming. Take it to Jesus. It's not as light as this book. It's too big for you. So remember to go to Jesus. The same way that that woman let Jesus attend to those who were holding stones. Are there challenges that are holding stones at you? Are there medical conditions that are holding stones at you? Are there challenges in your family that are holding stones at you, that are too big for you? Relax in Jesus' presence. The woman raised her head. Woman, where are those people who had come here to stone you? The woman responded, they are no longer here. I do not see any one of them. Why? Because Jesus had responded to the challenges of the day. The challenges of the day for you, the challenges for the day for our communities, the challenges of the day for our families, the challenges of the day as we look at our future. Let Jesus speak to those challenges. And in Jesus' own way, He will attend to those challenges. And He will ask you and I, where are those challenges? And in turn will say, I do not see them. And Jesus will say, now go. Now you go. Go. I will go with you. Only when we allow Jesus to be in our presence. So what are challenges? List the things that you hope to change in your life. Things that are too big for you to change. Maybe, is it a dietary change? Maybe you need to make some dietary changes. But yet at times you realize even quitting, drinking, diet, for example, a diet Coke, if it is not healthy for you, maybe it's overwhelming to you. It's now bigger than you can handle. But maybe the person who is sitting next to you will say, that's simple, that's easy. But yet to you, given your capacity, given your resilience, it's overwhelming to you. Then now you can hand over to Christ. As you try to make health changes, rely on God. Is it mindset shift? Maybe Myron was reminding us that at times we entertain negative thoughts more and more and multiply. Maybe it's not easy for you to quit, to give up negative thoughts. It has been part of your habit for 40 years. It's not easy for you to wake up one morning and now you start thinking positively. Maybe you have been in this habit for a long time where always when you look at someone, you always say, oh, they didn't sing right today. Oh, I wish they had raised their voices a little bit. Oh, I wish they had done it this way. Maybe that is a habit that you have allowed to be part of your life for a long time. And it's not easy for you. Maybe that's the thing that you need to go to God with and say, God, help me change this mindset. It's not easy for me. Maybe it might be letting go. Letting go is not easy for you. Letting go a grudge is not easy for you. You are surprised when you hear someone say, I do not hold any grudge against someone. And you say, they're faking. They're faking. I know it. No, they're just faking it. But maybe when you go before Christ and say, to me, it's so hard. I always find myself holding a grudge. You didn't sit this cup right, therefore I'm holding a grudge against you. You roasted this taking, you didn't roast it right to the best. It's not good enough. Maybe it's not that tender. And you are so mad. And you hold a grudge. But now you can go to Christ and say, this is what I cannot change in my life. I've tried it over and over. I've tried it. There are so many people that I have grudges against. This is what I'm bringing before you today, Christ. What is it in your own life? Can you list one thing today that you say, God, can I list one thing that I can say, God, I want this to change in my life? I've tried it, or I've never tried it, but today I'm listing it and saying, God, this I want to change. I loved apples so much. And one time, Lenten season, I had to give up apples. Oh, and my goodness. It was Lenten season. And how I love apples. My kids, at one point, they said, all the time you go grocery shopping, when mom says, please pick up some fruits, it's always apples and apples and apples and apples. They had to remind me. And I said, oh, by the way, I had to reflect and say, yeah. I checked myself and I said, they are right. They were right. Please, remember some fruits, apples. Remember some fruits, apples. It was hard for me to make that realization. More so to quit apples during Lenten season. Surprising enough, at times even my kids would slice the apples in a very nice way, forgetting that I had given up apples that Lenten. Then they would say, here are some apples for you, Dad. Then at times I would find it hard to remind them, grudgingly, I am giving up apples this Lenten season. It was a struggle, some low volume. It was no longer, confident voice. I am giving up some apples this Lenten season. There was an age for me to say, thank you for the apples. But I had to remind myself, it's time to give up apples. Time to give up apples. Joel Gura, this book, the one that we are using for our sermon series, was 288 pounds. And one day, in a service like this, he was challenged, what is it that you want to quit? What is it that you want to change in your life? And he decided that he wanted to give up 25 pounds. That was his target. Myron reminded us, don't make the target too big. At times it's overwhelming and it's unrealistic. So for Joel, he decided that out of his 288 pounds, what was realistic to him was 25 pounds. But 6 years later, he had reduced his weight by 70 pounds. Why? Because he relied on Christ. He relied on God and said, God, I have tried to change this. I have tried to engage in health behavior. I have tried to change my diet, but I have failed dismally. Help me out. This is my area of growth. We all vary. Your area of challenge, your area of growth is not my area of growth. We all vary. There's no perfect human being in this whole world. That's why even Paul, after so many years, about 30 years of ministry, in the book of Philippians, he says, I'm running towards the goal. I have not yet made it, but help me, oh God, in other ways. I am running towards the goal. I have not yet made it. What is the area that you have not made it? Point your area and be courageous enough this morning to say, I have not made it in this area. I have not made it in this area. Not as a guilty way of feeling, but as a way of relaxing in God's grace, knowing that God loves you no matter who you are. But you can grow and become better. I can grow and become better. I can be bigger as a congregation. You are a great congregation, Milford Mill. I've said this over and over again. But you can be a greater congregation, growing in different areas and getting bigger and bigger to an extent that you can say, God, we have not yet made it. This is our area of growth and we are facing it and we want to grow. God help me. God help me. Relaxing in God's presence to an extent that you are God's home. According to Paul, the book of Ephesians chapter 3, verse 17 to 19. By the way, we are hearing it from a murderer, someone who murdered people. But on the way to Damascus, he was transformed. On his way to Damascus, this murderer experienced God's grace. A murderer was transformed. And he's the one who is now writing, I know this. I experienced it. I murdered people. Even on that day, I had planned to murder people at the temple on my way to Damascus, on the way to kill people, to murder some more people. God reached out and called him by name. Saul, 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 Saul. This is your area of growth, Saul, Saul, Saul. This is your area of growth. To see God's image in every human being and realize that you are interconnected with fellow human beings. This is your area of growth, Paul. And on that day, he was transformed from Saul to Paul. And now he is writing. That's why in the book of Galatians he writes, it is no longer I who lives, but Christ who dwells in me. He transformed me. And now he is sharing with us. Oh, my fellow human beings, God found a home in me. God found a home in me. Letting God's love dwell in us, that's our business as human beings. Letting God's love dwell inside us and not concentrate, oh God, you cannot sit in my heart because of this and this and this. We spend more time emphasizing on what stops God from dwelling inside our hearts. But our business is to let go and say, God, I know these are things that might stop you from residing in my heart, but I know they won't stop you when I surrender and I give them to you and say, God, I do not want this in my life. I have missed the mark. I'm sorry. I'm ready for you to make your home in my heart today at Milford Mill. If that's your area of growth where you have never in your life allowed God to make a home in your heart, this is the moment. Seize this moment and say, while you are seated there, say, God, I've never opened my heart to you. Will you let your home inside my heart? Will you let your spirit dwell inside my heart and let the transformation be real to an extent that you can join Paul, a former murderer, and you can join Paul and say, yes, I know. I have experienced God's love. I have experienced God's forgiveness right here at Milford Mill. Jesus is here this morning to transform you and I, to help us and empower us, to grow us to an extent that come Thanksgiving Day, family members will say, what happened? What happened? Oh, my Jesus and I. My Jesus and I, you respond. My Jesus and I, we are friends, and he transformed me. He empowered me to an extent that now I can say something positive. Now I can let go of the grudges. Now I can hug genuinely. Now I can encourage others. Now I can change my diet. Now I can do all these things. It is God. It is Christ who dwells in me. It is no longer I, but Christ who dwells inside me. He transformed me. He touched me in a new way. And now I am relaxing in God's grace. Will you let yourself relax in God's grace? Every day, reminding yourself, when you miss the mark, you quickly go back and say, I missed it. And God picks you up and you relax in God's grace and you say, I'm moving forward because God, I am relaxing in God's grace. Will you go in God's grace and say it is possible, transformation is possible, change is possible, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ, the Son of God, who died on the cross, paying the price for you and I. He can make it possible in you and through me. Amen.